America. It's a nation of rich diversity, a melting pot of cultures, ideas, and backgrounds from every corner of the globe. But what if we zoom in on the states that remain overwhelmingly, well, white? You might be curious, where in America is the population predominantly white? And what does life look like in those states? Maybe it's a certain rural charm, a distinct local culture, or simply the appeal of small-town life that keeps these places the way they are. Whether you're curious, planning to visit, or simply fascinated by America's regional diversity, let's dive into the top 10 whitest states. From stunning mountains and vast plains to charming small towns, we'll explore each state's unique character and uncover why they're on this list. Nebraska kicks off our list with a fascinating mix of immigrant history. By the 1870s, Nebraska was like a cultural melting pot, with nearly a quarter of the population being foreign-born. People from Denmark, Sweden, Germany, and Ireland flocked here, chasing dreams of new land and opportunity. But what really stands out about Nebraska is how well it preserved this heritage. The state's top baby names are Oliver, Henry, and Liam, all classic names that reflect Nebraska's early settlers. Nebraska today remains about 88.1% white, with a community vibe that locals describe as warm and welcoming, almost like everyone's extended family. Next up, Montana is known for wide open spaces and a classic Americana vibe. Italians and Germans first settled here, especially in counties like Ferguson Park. The rugged terrain drew English and Scottish cattlemen, shaping the region's strong cowboy culture. The funny thing about Montana is the sheepmen versus cattlemen rivalry. It was like a real-life Wild West. Even today, around 88.9% of Montana's population identifies as white. But it's more than numbers. There's a sense of unity here, with people who often have deep roots and a shared love for the outdoors. Utah is a unique state, largely shaped by Mormon settlers who came in the mid-1800s. Around 70% of Utah's population is still Mormon, a community that brings its own strong values and traditions. Early settlers were British, Danish, and Norwegian, coming in waves and building a community from scratch in what was once wild, rugged land. If you've ever been inside a Mormon temple, you'd get the idea. Tradition here is preserved like nowhere else. Today, around 90.6% of Utah's population identifies as white. But what sets Utah apart is that it still feels like a tight-knit community, with a blend of faith and culture that's unique in the U.S. If you think of Iowa, picture rolling farmland, summer fairs, and lots of classic American charm. Iowa's heritage is Scandinavian, with early settlers from Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. There were also Irish, Dutch, and even some Quaker families. Mormons arrived here too, around the same time as they did in Utah. Iowa's culture is deeply tied to the land and the community's resilience. 90.6% of its population identifies as white. But there's something more to Iowa than just demographics. It's a place where people smile at strangers, where neighbors help each other, and where family traditions go back generations. In Wyoming, we get a real sense of the Old West. British, German, and Italian immigrants came here seeking adventure and opportunity, especially in the late 1800s. Wyoming's population today is around 92.5% white, but that's just one part of the story. This is a state with a deep connection to its heritage of ranching and open space. If you talk to people here, they'll tell you stories passed down from their ancestors who arrived from the British Isles or Germany. Wyoming feels like a place where the past still lives, in the best possible way.
We're going to look at 10 states whose percentages.
Idaho's known for its white population, which sits around 93% today. Back in the 19th century, settlers from England were drawn to Idaho for its land and minimal government interference. Idaho has always had a bit of a rugged, independent vibe, and it attracted people looking to escape heavy taxes and government control. It's not just potatoes Idaho is famous for. It's also known for a sense of self-reliance that runs deep. The result is a close-knit community where people still value old-school traditions and look out for one another. New Hampshire is quintessential New England. The people here have strong roots in British, Irish, and Scottish ancestry. But what's interesting is that French Canadians also made their way down from Quebec in the 1800s, drawn by jobs in textile mills. This mix gives New Hampshire a slightly different flavor from its neighbors. even though it remains 93.1% white. Locals joke that in some places, Taco Bell counts as diverse cuisine. But what New Hampshire lacks in diversity, it makes up for in community spirit and tradition. West Virginia is like a world unto itself. Known for its mountains and rural landscapes, the state's heritage is deeply rooted in Scottish, Irish, and German cultures. If you visit West Virginia, you'll hear folk music heavily influenced by Scottish and Irish sounds, a true legacy of the early settlers. West Virginia remains around 93.5% white, with a culture that feels almost untouched by time. You get a real sense of pride here. People in West Virginia love their state and embrace its quirks and character. Vermont is very much like New Hampshire, but with a bit more small-town feel. With 94.2% of its population identifying as white, it's a state where traditions run deep. French Canadians were among the early groups to arrive, and their influence can still be seen in small pockets, but mostly it's British, Irish, and Scottish ancestry that defines Vermont. There's a special pride Vermonters take in their communities. It's one of those places where you feel like everyone knows each other and looks out for one another. And finally, Maine. Maine takes the top spot with a white population of 94.4%. If you go to Portland, Maine, you'll see what I mean. 91.27% of people there are white, which is high for a city. Maine settlers were mostly from England, Ireland, and Scotland, and they brought a strong sense of community with them. Maine feels like one of those places where time slows down a little. People here love their traditions, whether it's family recipes, local festivals, or simple gatherings by the coast. Maine has a way of making people feel at home, like you've stepped into a postcard of small-town America. And there you have it. The top 10 whitest states in the U.S., each with its own unique history and cultural flavor. From the rural charm of West Virginia to the New England traditions of Maine and Vermont, each of these states tells a story about the people who came here looking for something special, something worth passing down. Whether it's the small-town fairs in Iowa or the wide-open spaces of Montana, these places have a character that's distinctly American. So, what do you think? Would you consider moving to one of these states, or do you already live in one? Let us know in the comments, and remember to keep it respectful. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.